A huge winter storm is coming to the United States this weekend, and this is going to bring major problems, including the risk for heavy snowfall that will lead to as much as 12 to 20 inches of snow from the Central Plains back into the Midwest, as well as the Ohio Valley and the Mid-Atlantic region. In addition to that, this will bring a big ice storm and as well as the threat for severe weather, including damaging winds, hail, and a few tornadoes. And we'll also be talking about the potential for another winter storm during the middle of next week, anywhere from Texas back through the Ohio Valley and perhaps into the Northeast. So in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down everything that you need to know about the weather that's going to be impacting the United States over the next 7 days. And we'll begin with what's happening across the country today. And for right now, there's a lot of snow still falling back over in the Northeast. We've actually had a few snow squalls moving towards the Washington, D.C. area. And this is going to bring a few inches of snow around and just before sunset. And then things should start to taper down as we go later into tonight. There will continue to be lake effect snow into tomorrow near Lake Ontario and Lake Erie as a low pressure system continues to spin just to the north of New England. On the other hand, we are dealing with really nice weather across the Great Plains, the Southeast, and the Midwest today. Enjoy it while it lasts, because it's not going to stay like this as we go into Saturday, Sunday, and Monday because of this large storm that is sitting right off the coast of Washington and Oregon. This is going to be moving inland tonight, and eventually by tomorrow morning, this will be moving across the Rocky Mountains, and this is what's going to transpire into a really large winter storm across the Central Plains, the Ohio Valley, the Midwest, the Mid-Atlantic region, and even parts of the Northeast. Now, this winter storm is becoming more of a serious problem right now, and you'll notice that we now officially have winter storm warnings that have now been issued across most of Kansas, a lot of Missouri, and also parts of Illinois. Winter storm watches are in effect in the dark blue. We also have ice storm warnings that are now just being issued outside of Joplin in southeast Missouri, where we expect significant ice accumulation this weekend, and then winter weather advisories anywhere in the purple, so a large chunk of the Great Plains and also back into areas like the Northeast, including Washington, D.C. I would expect by tonight or tomorrow morning that we'll have winter storm watches in effect back over near Maryland and parts of Virginia and West Virginia for the potential for some significant snow accumulation as we go into Monday with this particular cross-country winter storm. Now let's talk more about the timing of this winter storm, and we're going to begin with the Central Plains and then go more wide view. Beginning with what's happening tomorrow, overall we're going to start to see some freezing rain and snow falling during the late morning hours and into the early afternoon. This will be relatively light across Nebraska and as well as Kansas and even parts of western Missouri. Any untreated roadways are going to be slick, so make sure you're taking it slow on the roadways if you are traveling tomorrow. Eventually by dinner time, freezing rain is becoming a lot more widespread, and notice how there's going to be a lot of freezing rain falling even in Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, and as well as Kansas, which is going to make this system even more dangerous because there will be snow and freezing rain at the same time, which is just going to create a ton of problems, especially if you have any intention of traveling, which again, I do not recommend at all. By around 7 to 8 o'clock, the freezing rain is going to start to become more moderate to even heavy at times, in addition to the snowfall. Eventually around midnight, the freezing rain is going to start to move a bit further down to the south, which is going to lead to heavier snow falling in northern Missouri, freezing rain happening anywhere from St. Louis back through Kansas City, and then just purely rain for the Joplin area around and just after midnight. And eventually as we go into Sunday morning, sleet, freezing rain, and snow are all going to be falling basically simultaneously here across parts of Kansas, Missouri, and also back into southern Illinois. Heavy snowfall will be falling in Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri, and Illinois. And then eventually as we get closer to around 9 to 10 o'clock in the morning Sunday, the freezing rain, sleet, and snow will continue in the purple, and then again lots of snow falling anywhere in the blue. And this is going to again be heavy snowfall, so it's going to stack up relatively quickly, especially since it's going to be more of a wet snowfall. And then eventually as we get closer to around lunchtime on Sunday, snow will continue, and then eventually this will start to move out as we go into Sunday night. Now let's go more broad view, because that's just one of the computer models that we can only use until about Sunday afternoon. So we're going to show you what's happening beyond Sunday afternoon. So notice again how this winter storm is just going to explode by Sunday morning across the Central Plains in the Midwest. We're talking about several different threats with this winter storm, including the risk for significant severe weather, perhaps even a severe weather outbreak in the lower Mississippi Valley as we go into Sunday afternoon, including damaging winds, hail, and as well as a few tornadoes. And then heavy snowfall will be falling anywhere from literally Virginia and West Virginia back in areas like Kansas. It is going to be a very elongated winter storm when it comes to a west to east direction. Freezing rain will be falling in Kentucky and as well as parts of southern Illinois, and even northeastern Tennessee. Eventually, by the late evening Sunday into early Monday morning, that snow will continue into the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. It will also be impacting areas like Maryland, New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. And then eventually, a little bit of freezing rain will try to mix in, I think, near Maryland, but it should be predominantly a snow threat over there. We actually could see a pretty significant amount of snow over there near Maryland and as well as Pennsylvania. We'll talk more about the specific details of snowfall accumulation in just a moment. And then eventually, this winter storm will be moving off the coast. Now, with all that said, there's a pretty good chance that we'll be live on Sunday covering this to some extent, and we may even do a live stream tomorrow night doing a Q&A on this, answering your questions about the winter storm. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified when we do go live. Now, before we talk about snow accumulation and as well as ice accumulation, I just want to point out that on Sunday there is a slight risk for severe weather right now for East Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas, and then the marginal threat even goes up into parts of southwestern Tennessee. So overall, again, we're expecting damaging winds to be the primary threat out of a line of storms. If we get any prefrontal convection, there could be an isolated strong tornado or two. This is not a repeat of what we saw last Saturday, but it is going to be a somewhat similar setup, just not as favorable for strong tornadoes. It's going to be a very contingent threat. If we even see a strong tornado, there will be a potential for a few tornadoes embedded in that line of thunderstorms as well. And again, that's going to be the primary threat. Now, this is the latest from the Weather Prediction Center in terms of winter storm impacts as we go into Sunday. And again, notice how this is a very large area that we're talking about that could have minor, moderate, or even major travel impacts, especially in the red shaded area. This is where you're really going to want to make sure that you're not traveling on Sunday. Make sure that you have taken the right precautions already and have preparations ready to go, and be prepared for the threat for a few areas seeing power outages for perhaps over 24 hours. It's definitely a possibility, especially with this ice storm threat down here across parts of southern central Missouri and back into southern Illinois, and as well as much of Kentucky as we go into Sunday night and Monday morning. Now, I'm going to show you snow accumulation. I'm going to show you two different graphics here. The first one is the HRRR model. This is a more short-term model, and it only runs through Sunday at lunchtime. So there will be more snow after this, but right now, this is a pretty good indication of what you'll see through about Sunday at lunchtime. Many areas across northern Missouri will see between 5 to 10 inches of snow. Around and just outside of Kansas City, I do expect many areas to at least be around 8 to 12 inches of snow. I think we'll have a couple of pockets there closer to 16 to 18 inches of snow out of this. And then further down to the south in central and southern Missouri, it'll be predominantly freezing rain and sleet until we eventually see a brief transition to snow as we go later into Sunday afternoon. So just keep that in mind. This is what the European model is indicating in terms of snow accumulation. Notice that there will be, again, some snow, I think, back down in southern Missouri. It's just going to be predominantly ice accumulation from all the freezing rain that we're going to be seeing. So despite there being snow, it's just not going to be a whole lot. It'll make it a little bit more tricky on the roadways too. If snow is accumulating on top of that ice, it's going to make things a little bit more dangerous, especially if there's anybody traveling. Now, in terms of total snowfall accumulation in the Ohio Valley and the Midwest, we are expecting a really large corridor from Kansas back into Virginia with upwards of 5 to 10 inches of snowfall in the forecast. There will be some pockets back over, for example, near Kansas City that will be over 10 to 12 inches of snow, and that will also be a possibility back over here like West Virginia, for example, and maybe even northern Kentucky. I think overall, though, this model is underestimating some of our snowfall accumulation. For example, I do think areas like central and southern Illinois will be a bit higher. I think 6 to 10 inches of snowfall is realistic. I think there could be some spots over 12 inches of snow in this area as well. So keep in mind that this graphic here, I think, is a little conservative. In our next video, we're going to go much more into detail about where we're going to be seeing the greatest amount of snowfall. And once these short-term computer models come in, I think we'll have a much better idea of how much snowfall is going to be falling in these areas. Because overall, this forecasted graphic here, at least from the European model, in terms of how much snowfall we could see, I would say is just underestimating this particular winter storm just a little bit in terms of intensity of snowfall accumulation. Now, in terms of ice accumulation, I would say this is also a little aggressive, but I do think we're going to be talking about a significant ice storm just outside of Joplin, Missouri, for example, eastern Kansas and southeastern Missouri. This is where we're expecting the potential for over a quarter of an inch of ice, and there will likely be several locations over a half of an inch of ice accumulation. And I do think there will be a couple of isolated locations that get close to 0.75 inches of ice accumulation, which is significant. So make sure if you're anywhere here in Kansas or southern Missouri that you are ready for the potential, again, for some power outages that could last upwards of 24 hours, perhaps even longer, due to all the ice accumulation that is in the forecast. Unfortunately, I think Kentucky is going to be the worst hit state out of this entire winter storm, because basically the entire state is either seeing ice accumulation or snow accumulation. We are expecting the potential for between a quarter to a half an inch of ice accumulation for almost 50% of the state, if not perhaps perhaps even more of the state. And again, that's going to be anywhere just south there of areas like Cincinnati, Ohio, and this will stretch into parts of southern Illinois, and we'll likely see ice accumulation even into parts of Virginia. And also in Tennessee, we'll likely have a little bit of a glazing of ice, maybe even up to 1/10 of an inch of ice in some areas around and just outside of Nashville as we go into Sunday night and as well as Monday morning. And the last thing I want to talk about is the potential for another winter storm as we go into late next week. We are currently thinking that we are going to get some sort of Pacific Ocean moisture transport as we go into either Thursday or Friday of next week, and that could allow for some sort of winter storm to form in the southern plains and then eventually cross through areas in the southeast and eventually towards the east coast. Again, there's a relatively, I would say, low to medium confidence of this happening. I'll give it about a 30% chance this happens. Again, there's still a few days, so make sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll keep you posted with the latest on this. If this does end up becoming more to fruition, we're gonna have a much more detailed video on this, more than likely either Sunday or Monday. So make sure to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified with our latest video updates.